Why is addiction considered a disease? I know a lot of people out there say no one forced you to shove that needle in your arm or force you to put that drink down your throat. Most people think that addiction is just weak-minded people who say it's an excuse to label it as a disease. But the fact is that a lot of you have probably never been through this before or don't know anybody that's been through it. For you people that have been through addiction and know family members that's been through addiction, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's something that you can't help, you can't control. You know, you go to a party and a lot of people are drinking, and then when you start drinking, it's like a whole another ball game. It's like one's too many and 1,000 is not enough. So why is drug addiction considered a disease? Well, the science behind addiction has came a long way over the past 20 years with the growing prevalence of substance use disorders around the world. Many people still want to believe that addiction disorders only affect the weak-willed. They see it as a character flaw instead of an actual disease. However, when looking closer at the science explaining the way addiction affects the human brain, it's undeniable that it acts and affects people physically just like any other disease. So, what is a disease? Simply put, a disease is a medical condition that prevents the body from function normally. Diseases such as type 1 diabetes, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and other chronic conditions have effects that afflict the individual on some level for their entire lives. That sounds familiar? The long-term effects of addiction are no different. Many diseases are incurable, but a lot of times people do experience remission. And they also experience alleviation of the symptoms of the disease. Addiction is no different. Individuals who have struggled with addiction will always be susceptible to relapse and may share the predilection of addiction with their children. It has been proven that it can be transferred through DNA. Understanding how dopamine works in the human brain is at the very basis of understanding how addiction acts as a disease in the human body. In a normal functioning brain, there are natural levels of dopamine. Dopamine is a neutral transmitter that encourages us to seek out basic pleasures like eating, resting, and other enjoyable activities that make us feel good, that releases this chemical dopamine in our brain. While basic and pleasurable actions will release dopamine, so will unhealthy ones like using drugs. Often the drugs cause this release much more quickly and to a much higher degree. Using opiates or other drugs creates an enormous euphoric rush of dopamine in the brain that is difficult to compare to any other natural source. This is because these chemicals that are being introduced to the body that don't exist in nature, when the rush of dopamine leaves the brain, individuals can feel depressed, anxious, and have physical withdrawal symptoms. It's difficult for the brain to replicate, the intense level of pleasure or happiness naturally. This requiring more of the drug to feel normal. That isn't just a feeling. The brain will literally feel as though the only way it can continue to survive is by seeking out more of the substance that has allowed you to feel such massive rushes of pleasure. When someone is fully in its grips of addiction, their brain will not be content with just one normal dose of the drug that it seeks. It will consistently require larger doses every time to seek out a high as good as the very first time someone used. This is why addiction is often described as a chase, where people are seeking out that first time feeling all the time. The easiest way to look at changes in the brain during the height of addiction is to look at people who are in recovery. Many people judge those who are still struggling with drug use as weak-minded or generally bad people. What about people who have been in recovery for years but experience relapse? it is fair to call someone who has worked hard towards their recovery for many years weak, because they gave in to the triggers that led them to use again. There are a number of evidence-based treatments that and programs, particularly for the disease of opiate addiction, that can provide relief of physical withdrawals and cravings. However, to experience long-term recovery, this person will have to continually work on the causes and effects of the disease, partially because of the profound change to the dopamine and structures to the brain. And, this is kind of similar to people who get diabetes. You get diabetes from eating unhealthy food. So as a result of that, you get diabetes, but over time, it is a manageable disease just like addiction is. But with diabetes, you have to take your medicine, you have to eat healthy, and you have to live a healthy lifestyle for you to be able to live with diabetes and for it to not affect you. It's the same thing with addiction. You're always going to live with it in your brain. Everybody has addictive behaviors, and some are worse than others. But it is a manageable disease as long as you work the program of 12 steps that works for people, or, you go to church, or however your program of choice. I don't judge anybody. It is manageable. And through everyday living of you making the right choices, hopefully some people won't have to go back to that addicted lifestyle. It's something that I experienced firsthand in this addiction cycle. You're right, nobody forced a needle in my arm, but how it started was my teeth were hurting, and I went to the hospital and they prescribed me pain pills, Vicodin, whatever, and yeah, that would help along with the antibiotics to help get rid of the pain. Over time, my teeth pain had gotten so bad and I couldn't find Vicodins or couldn't get to the hospital or set up a doctor's appointment at that time, so I turned to heroin. It helped tremendously with my pain, but over time of using that, it was very addictive, and before I knew it, I was caught in the addictive lifestyle, and I was trapped in it for over 5 years. Now, what I want to explain is, the disease part of it, can be hereditary. Have you ever noticed, if you're an alcoholic, and you can drink a lot more than all your friends, have you ever wondered why? Some people, their fathers were alcoholics, or their grandfathers were alcoholics, and they drink all the time. It's a very disposition that can be exposed to your kids, and you don't even have to be around them. If your child grows up without you around and he has no idea that you were ever an alcoholic, they can still be an alcoholic. When they go to have their first drink, they're going to think it's not enough. One drink too many and 1,000's not enough. That's a basic explanation of it. I think it's really funny when people say addiction is a choice. No, it's not. You cannot control it. It was my choice to put that drug into my body, but once the addiction takes over, it's not a choice no more. Just like cigarettes in a way, but times 1,000 on the level that it works. Consumes everything in your life. You can't do anything without it. You can't get out of bed. You can't eat food. It consumes every part of your body, your will, your spirit, and everything. It's something that you really have to understand by going to meetings and talking to other addicts. And you'll understand that you're not the only person out there that is addicted. There are so many people, and it don't discriminate. Moms, aunts, grandmas, grandpas. A lot of people got addicted through alcohol or pain pills, and a lot of people who are on heroin and fentanyl started out with, Vicodins and pain pills from the doctors. Through proper management, I'm just saying, is this disease is manageable. It'll always be in your brain, and you have to check it. You have to work on it. You have to do what's necessary to stay clean. No matter what, you'll catch yourself slipping sometimes, and you can feel it in your body that it's always trying to creep back up. You could not use in 5 years, and every now and then your mind's gonna wander and take you back to those times and try to get your body to do that again, to go through everything, the hell that you put yourself through. And I just kind of wanted to make this video because there's a lot of people are misinformed by the information that's out there and not educated. And you really have to educate yourself on this topic, because addiction, it is a tricky subject, you know. I thought, before I was ever an addict, my younger brother was an addict. And I always thought it was a choice. I was like, why do you keep doing this to yourself? Day and day, I would see him drink and use heroin, and he would be out of it, almost dying every day. I'm like, brother, why don't you stop? Just stop. Just put it down and stop. I didn't realize until I became an addict, you can't. You cannot stop. No matter what, you cannot stop. It takes over every part of your life. Physically, mentally, emotionally. It controls every part of your body, your brain, and your spirit. And you can't just stop. You people out there like, oh, I can take a drink and just put it down. Well, good for you. A lot of us can't. Because my first drink leads to a needle in my arm 2 hours later. And a lot of people are like that, let me tell you. A lot of you are just simple-minded and not willing to educate yourself to the facts of what it means to be addicted. Like I said, you can take a drink and just put it down and not have another drink for 2 months. Well, I can't. I have a drink, I have to have another. And then the next day I'm drinking twice as much. And then the next day after that I'm drinking 3 times as much. And then I'm doing drugs. And then I'm doing coke. And then I'm doing heroin. Because it's never enough for a person like me. Addiction is a very horrible thing to go through. A lot of people don't experience it. A lot of people are lucky. But the very few and select few of us that have the addicted patterns in our lifestyle and are addicted, it's not a choice. Bottom line, it is not a choice. Do your research. It is not a choice. It is a disease. And I know I'm going to get a lot of people arguing with me about this in the comments, but I'm going to tell you, it is a disease, not a choice. Thanks.